All right. Guys, welcome to my studio. My name is Vitaly. Welcome back. This is the place where we talk about cameras, portraitures, how to shoot weddings, things of that nature. Now, in this video, I'm going to talk about the portraits and specifically Nikon Z9 and how to set up this camera for indoor portraits, outdoor portraits. If you're doing a wedding photography using this camera, this video specifically is for you. Now, I just want to kind of put it out there that this is not the only way to set up the camera. There are many other ways to do this, but I got this camera for probably about 2 months ago, and I took my time to figure out exactly how this camera works, what are the function buttons, what can I do with this camera without having to constantly going back into the menu and change settings when I need from time to time. Now, one of the very first things that I want to talk about is setting up the function buttons. As you may or may not know, the camera has basically 3 function buttons right up here. Function 1, Function 2, and the Function 3. Now, this is really an incredible features that this camera has. And now this first setting that I want to share with you is probably, it doesn't really matter what genre of photography you use. Now, let me ask you this question. If I were to ask you, what is the most used button on the camera? You would say, of course, this is the shutter button, pretty much for any camera. Now, what is the second most used button on the camera? Somebody may say maybe it's a menu button, but that's not really the case. The most frequently used is the play button. Now, the problem is with Nikon cameras and different bodies that they make, maybe Sony or Canon as well, and Fuji, is that from time to time, depending on the new model, they move the play button that's located in the back of the camera, right over here, from the bottom to top to sides, and you can't always tell exactly, once you get a new camera body, where the function button, where the play button is. Now, the beauty with having a function 1 button, it is so intuitive. It is in a perfect location, as you can see, right where my middle finger is. Anytime you take a photograph, you can simply use your middle finger to really click on it. You never have to go down to the play button and figure out, wait a minute, was this at the bottom, was this at the top? This is the best used feature when it comes to functions. And now let me show you how to set this up. The first thing you want to do is you want to go down to menu, and you want to go down to the pencil icon under the custom settings menu. Then you want to scroll down to the F for controls, and you want to go down to the F2 custom control shooting. Click on that, and it will take you to the menu and kind of little image of your camera, and it will highlight whenever you on that specific function button within the camera. So the first one is a function 1. Once you click on it, you can choose any available menu that you have here, and one of them is a playback. Click on that. So now, every time you take a camera, and if you feel like you need to look at the image itself, you don't have to look for the play button on the camera, because it's going to be right underneath your finger, your middle finger. Setting number 2. Now, one of the, again, amazing things on this camera is it has what is called a star mode. And what it does is, the first thing you want to be able to set it up. You go down to the function 2, and here you can choose the star button or star menu, starlight view. You click on that, and let me show you what happens. Whenever you're in the low light situations, whether you are in a dark environment in a building, if you're shooting a wedding and you might be in a church, the churches sometimes can be low lit environment places. Sometimes you may not be able to use your flash. The star mode will help you to actually turn it on and turn it off, basically activate it. And when you activate the camera, look what happens. Now you can clearly see what you're focusing on. This is, again, another awesome feature. Just turn it on and turn it off. You don't have to go anywhere in the menu to look for it. It is right literally at the tip of your finger. Literally at the tip of your finger. Now, next setting is setting number 3. And this one has to do whenever you actually have to use flash. Whenever you put a flash on top of your camera, and you activate the flash, you turn the flash on, what happens is it equalizes the exposure. And at this point, it doesn't matter whenever you are changing your aperture or whenever you're changing your shutter speed, nothing is happening to the exposure. Okay, so some people have this question, well, how do I know how much flash do I need to add? Well, there are two things. One of them is if you're shooting in the TTL mode, it will constantly adjust based on the settings. And the second one is manually. In that case, what you could do is set your function button, which is this number 3, function button number 3, right under next to your pinky finger. And you can actually, when you press this button and you hold it, it turns off the flash. It basically, camera thinks that there's no flash on the camera. And you can turn it back on, and as you can see, at the bottom right of the screen, there's this little orange bolt shows up. It tells you that, okay, there's a camera, there's a flash attached to a camera. You click on it, and it turns it off. You let it go, and then you have your flash active again. So this is the third setting. Now the fourth setting is might be a little bit controversial because whenever you're trying to utilize your camera in different ways, some people have a unique ways the way they set this up. Now let me first thing is to remove my flash here. And so the setting number 4 is going to be applicable to the native Z lenses. And the way I use mine, because my camera is automatically already on the barrel of the lens, I set my focus ring, if you will, right, this one here, and I use this as my ISO button, okay? Because it is so intuitive right here. I certainly can use my ISO button at the top, but then I have to use my back dial to change it up and down if you're using in the manual mode. But because my hand is exactly right over here, and I need to go from a dark environment to maybe outdoors, I can quickly change my setting, as you can see. As I'm increasing my ISO, it changes right on the spot for me. I don't have to do anything else. Now, you can certainly set it to the auto ISO if you want to, but I think a lot of people who are using camera manually prefer to have it set to a manual setting. Now, this is a great way to use this barrel because the camera allows you to do so. Now, there are other lenses. For example, I use 24-70. That one has 3 different rings, and one of those rings actually you can set specifically as a function to only control the ISO, while you can use your focus ring for something else. So that's a setting number 4. Setting number 5 is probably one of the most fast forward, looking forward type of functions. And while it carries from previous cameras in the past, it really makes this camera, makes the Z9 so much more powerful. And I'm talking about IAF. Now, what this camera has is it has a 3D tracking. And the way to set up the 3D tracking and again, I'm talking about portraits specifically. I'm not talking about using it for sports or wildlife. This function is spectacular for any portraits. You go down to the I menu, and I have it preset where I can change my AF area mode. I set it down to the 3D tracking, and now at this point, I don't have to focus on the subject and then recompose. Focus and then recompose. That's the thing of the past. You no longer need to do this with mostly any mirrorless camera, particularly with this one. 3D tracking is spectacular. And the way that 3D tracking works is you can simply hold your trigger button or shutter button, and once you hold it just a little bit, now you can rotate and recompose however you need to. And it really is so sticky. It sticks to an eye, it sticks to the knob of the door, it sticks to the camera itself. I mean, it does amazing, amazing things, okay? But let me just expand on that AF function a little bit more. If you have a lot of people in the crowd and you want to focus specifically on 1 or 2 people, well, now this camera also allows you something else. You can set your AF on button, which is in the back of a camera that we typically use as a back button focus. You can actually set it to another function of focusing mode, and once you hold it, it can switch to the function that you need. So now let me show you how to set this up specifically. You go down to the menu, you go down to Controls again, F2 Custom Controls, and here you can actually go down to the AF on button, and in this area you can choose the AF mode that you want to have. Some people might want to have wide area AF and use a small, or wide area AF large. And I use wide area AF large because it helps me to focus in the crowd when there's a lot of people. I want to focus specifically on 1 or 2 people, and I simply hold AF in, and it shows up to me as just this red block, and I can focus on that specific person if I need to. So these are the 5 major settings that I would highly, highly recommend that you set your camera to your Z9, particularly going back to the very first setting when it comes to using your function 1 button as your play button. You're gonna love it moving forward. At this point, guys, thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions how I set up this camera, if I missed something as I was trying to demonstrate, please let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know how you set your camera for portraits, whether it's indoors, outdoors, wedding photography, portraiture, just related. Thanks so much for listening, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.